Well, firstly, I'm not going to use a presentation today. I think this is a good opportunity. I wasn't able to attend the last IIF, and I know that there's a lot of people with questions, and especially a lot of my solid retail supporters. So I think I'll give them an opportunity after, saying a few words. So firstly, things are pretty good. I'm um, I'm feeling pretty good. This is going to be a good Christmas. It's been a very long journey. Almonty is still, I still consider us the last credible man standing. We have now even deeper ties with a number of governments. Frustratingly, a lot of it I can't even talk about because of NDAs and all kinds of national security things. But ultimately, we have something that no one else has in our Korean asset, in that we have a vast amount of reserves and longevity and grade and expertise. We, of course, I last spoke to you, we've acquired a site in Montana. This site, I consider, well, the company considers, as well as myself, to be, for us, the best project in the US. It's not to disparage any other project. It's just we have a way of evaluating projects with our 136 years of knowledge and approach. And this to us was the best project, nearest to production, great grade, good reserves, well advanced permitting wise, in the right jurisdiction. And of course, in this geopolitical climate, in a perfect location for our transition into the United States fully as a company. Our intention is from January 1, we will be moving our primary listing from TSX into the NASDAQ. So there'll be a primary listing. We will maintain our TSX listing. So of course, we have a long history with Canada and we intend to maintain it. But from January, we will be fully transitioned in. This will bring certain market advantages. One, it'll allow us to then be included in a number of indices in the US, as we are currently in Canada. We will obviously move into an even higher volume environment in the United States, plus a whole bunch of mutual funds, pension funds, etc. What it basically does, bottom line, is it gives us a much higher visibility for the liquidity of the NASDAQ. And that, I think, is going to be very important as Korea comes fully online. We're going to talk about Korea in a minute. So I know that there's a whole bunch of people watching this who are desperately wanting to know what I'm going to say. And if I hear the word fluff one more time, I'm going to come looking for somebody because this is my money. And quite frankly, the way this has been put together, people are going to be very, very happy. So, in terms of the company itself, look, I've always pretty much done everything myself because, well, deep down inside, I have trust issues. I just find that's just how I am. But I also know that it's it's getting to a point where the company needs to be presented and in a more corporate vein without having a huge C-suite, which I can't stand the cost of huge C-suites. I need people who are focused, dedicated to their roles. We, of course, have brought in a great new CFO. We still have our old CFO who's working with us still out of Canada and works on consolidation, but we needed Brian Fox to come in as we transition into US GAAP reporting. We just announced an appointment of a COO. Obviously, General Allen is a great catch for us. And I think it's important to understand that, of course, his military background is very important, but essentially his experience in Korea in his execution of projects and obviously maintaining, for the United States Army in Korea, various projects that they constructed and then to maintain it going forward was the key to my decision. Working in Korea is it takes a while to really understand how to navigate in that culture. I think a lot of people go there with a assumption that, oh, everyone's going to work the same way as they do in Canada, as they do in the US, as they do in Australia, but it's just not the case in Korea. It took me a while to get up to speed. So the fact that John Allen has that background is extremely important to me. He is a COO who executes punch lists, and that is key in a company that is growing. It's a different skill set when the company has grown and is just basically maturing in with earnings. But as you're growing, and remember, we're not just building Korea. We're also looking at the tungsten oxide. We're also looking at the moly. We've now got Montana. There is a series of milestones to utilize the expertise that we have. And we don't know anything outside of tungsten, moly, a bit of tin, and a bit of copper as byproducts. That's it. We don't know anything about lithium. We don't know anything about rare earths. Well, we know about metals that are scarce and that are difficult to extract. That's our skill set. I've been asked, are we going to diversify? Are we going to become a one-stop shop for critical metals? The answer is no. We don't know anything about critical metals, the other ones. We know about our field and we're going to play to our strengths. And so I'm trying to build a team that will enhance that. And I have to also accept the reality that I just can't do everything as the company continues to grow as it is. It's growing at an enormous pace. If you remember this time last year, when I was on IIF, 12 months ago, we looked very different than we do today. And geopolitically, things are different. So we work with a lot more governments now. And it's just got to a point where I thought, you know what, if I add two or three people to the C-suite, and I already have now two, and I'm looking perhaps at a development officer as well, then I'll have a great core team that will be able to support what we're doing as a company. Now, in terms of outside of course, the tungsten oxide, are we looking at further acquisitions? At this moment, we don't see anything out there that we feel is for us. It doesn't mean that it's not good, great, fantastic. It's just not for us. And I think we have enough reserves under our belts to be able to offer quite an extraordinary solution to a number of governments who require this product, tungsten. And it was described actually recently not as a strategic metal, but as a vital metal. It's a sort of elevated strategic metal because it's in everything. And it's scarce both here and, of course, in China and Russia. And that's an interesting point and something I'll spend a couple of minutes on. That I have an insight into this industry because I've done it a long time. It doesn't mean that I like everything I look at. I don't like a lot of people that are in it. That's just me. But what I've seen is something very unusual. I've seen the price of tungsten significantly higher for the last 6, 7 months in China than in the West. And this is highly and technically unusual. And quite frankly, well, the comprehension behind it, there can only really be one explanation. Because if you work on the basis that 90% of all tungsten comes from China, Russia, and North Korea, and that when we price in the West, we're essentially pricing that 90%, how is it possible that that material is more expensive in its host country than it is when it's being exported with all the taxes, export duties, import duties, shipping? It shouldn't be the case. I've also seen an enormous increase in purchasing of not only Western concentrate, but also now Western hard metal scrap by China. This again, up until 3 years ago, this really never happened. Once, a little bit, but not to the levels that it is now. We know the subsidies are finished in China. They had a 4-year reduction program culminating in it being obviously finished last year. We know at least 5 mines that have closed in China. We know that their mine that they took the best projects in Kazakhstan, in their opinion, about 5 years ago, and they opened it earlier this year. That's not been really working as well as perhaps they wanted, because the transition from working as a subsidy mine to a free market mine is not an easy journey. And I've said this before, we know these mines very well and we have great respect for the guys there. But we're at least a decade ahead of them in efficiencies because we've had to exist in the free market. And it doesn't much noise our sector made. I see in 2011 when the price of tungsten went up, everyone was in the tungsten business. And I fast forward today and none of those mines opened. So I've seen this before with all this noise and all this drama that we get from some of our competitors. But ultimately, we know how to make money even in a low price environment. Imagine what's about to happen as Korea comes online. And now that brings me on to the gorilla in the room. What's happening? Well, there will be pictures out shortly, but for all the technical people on this forum, we are now moving mineral to the wrong pad. There's more. I've even put a message on the bottom of the ROM pad because I won't actually ever see in my lifetime the bottom of that pad again. Neither will my son, and probably not my grandchild. When he's old, he may see the bottom of that ROM pad, such as the amount of longevity in this project. And we're about to start now the dry commissioning of the grinding circuit. This is it. This is now where we see what's going to drop off and what isn't. We've done the engine tests. That was all fine. But now we have the run up into the startup of the mine. It's a bit nervous. It's not because I'm worried about the process. The pilot plant is producing, as I said, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and the process is showing that we are within our design parameters at launch. What I'm, anxious about now is there's been a huge amount of assembly, a huge amount of construction. Now that we start dry commissioning everything, does anything drop off? It shouldn't, but it's like anything. When you turn the tap on your new bathroom that you've just built, when you turn the hot tap on, just cold water come out because they put the pipes in the wrong place. Remember, we've had third parties checking third parties. My trust issues have meant that I've essentially labored over this, but we're now at that point of finding out. Processing, I'm relaxed. The pilot plant, when you have a 16th scale pilot plant, it affords you a certain luxury in knowledge that I still don't understand why other mines, juniors, don't do this because just racing, and I know that some of you find, my expression of walking to the finish line you don't like, but it's true. You have to. And the pilot plant affords you the luxury of knowing that your process is in good shape. And the process, has altered during our construction through the work we've done in the pilot plant. So we have made adjustments even prior to full scale installation. But now we see if installation was done properly. And I think that's an important moment. We've just had a visit from KfW and Hatch, the independent engineer. We've had We've sent out all of the pilot plant samples to our primary off-taker at that site. We've had multiple visits from multiple government agencies. Everyone is very excited. We're going to have a good Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. And I may even get some sleep, which will be nice. So, in terms of tungsten oxide, we have a plan now. We have a design. Now it's a question of location. We obviously are looking at Korea very seriously. They want us to build it there, and my sense is that's where it will be. But now there's a little bit of talk of maybe we should build it in the US to track cheap energy as we find in Korea. But to be honest, I think we end up in Korea because now we have the Montana mine for the US authorities to focus on. The Montana mine, we will move any equipment that we are missing from our Los Santos asset so that we can, in fact, that it has a plant permit and water rights. And I can't underestimate how much time is saved by having those two items. And he has a plant. Yes, it processes garnet, but a lot of the conceptual equipment can be used for tungsten. And as I said, anything we're missing, we'll bring up from Spain. And so essentially, we have a lot of work ahead of us. The drilling at the Molly continues. The work at the drilling in Panasqueira continues. That is for mine planning for level 4. There will be more news to follow on that expansion. Remember, we don't need permits. We don't need any surface infrastructure. This is just underground mine development. And I think with the startup, we're going to start generating data at the beginning of January. which we can publicly release. But we will be having throughput this month. So on that, I've got what, 15, 14 minutes left. Hand it over for any questions because normally there's a whole bunch of questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the non-presentation, I may say today. uh, so this is great. In preparation of this interview, I was looking back at the IIF. You know that the first time you presented was 4 years ago already. I remember during that time we would have a million question in the Q&A, and we have only 6 today.
Okay, well you know what? That's good. Obviously,
And
everyone's racing to buy the stock.
Yes, and out of those 6 questions, 3 comments are to congratulate you and to thank you for your hard work.
I'd like to thank my mom, my brother, and my sister for taking the time to send those thanks.
Seriously speaking,
but as it is,
yeah.
we'll take the 2 questions,
Yep.
and then I can talk a little bit more about the trials and tribulations of this journey that we've all taken together.
Great. So, okay, very quick. When do you expect to generate first revenues from Korea?
I would expect actually to invoice beginning of January for material that's pretty much in spec. But you know, the reality is the ramp up is 30 to 90 days. The secret with a flotation plant is that your focus is on grinding.
Yes.
The ramp up is all about grinding. If I can deliver the right size fraction to those cells, this thing works. You know, gravity, I like gravity because it's like an art form. You know, it's just one of those things you like to balance, but it can take years to balance a gravity plant. Flotation is chemical. It's about grinding. And one thing we do very well is grinding. So I try and get through each day with a set of bogeys. I don't try and anticipate next week. I say, let's get through the day and hit our targets in each day. And as long as I keep hitting those targets, progress is made. So revenue will be booked, but the most important thing is that grind. If that grind makes my size fraction, you will literally go to overnight significant revenue because it'll just pass through the flotation cells as designed.
Perfect. For the moly drilling, will you be sharing assays as drilling occurs, or will you be waiting until the full drill program is completed before sharing the results?
No. As the results as the drills are completed, once we get enough data, we'll put it together with a third party, and we'll have a revision done on the 43101 to keep people updated on that. You have to remember that we have quite an advantage because it's so close to our existing underground infrastructure. We can get in there, and so the drilling we can do a lot more drilling for the money. We're not going from surface. But yes, as data is being generated, it will be released, as it will in Portugal as well. Although Portugal was a little different because that's really for mine planning purposes rather than exploration or at least confirmation of resource purposes. But the moly, yes, we will do it. And, you know, there's been no diminished demand for the product in country. You know, if anything, there's been an increase because of now the increasing unreliability of what's going on in Chile. But yes, we will release it as we go along. But I think with the moly, it's important to know that my focus is tungsten, is the mine, the phase 2, which is the expansion. And that's something we often forget because we have to very quickly move as we start the wet commissioning in Samdong, we'll move straight away to the mine development of phase 2 to expand in Korea. And I think with the tungsten oxide is also very important to allow us to continue a journey of downstreaming. But what's happened with pricing in tungsten is that a lot of the margin has now sort of found its way back to the upstream. And that, I think you've seen this across the board. Suddenly, downstream margin is not as attractive as upstream. It's really something you should view for the future. And because politically it makes sense, because Korea doesn't actually have any of its own tungsten oxide production. It all comes in from China. And so the bottom line is that I think people have to understand the new norm in terms of pricing. This current price is probably going to go higher, up to about 1,000, maybe even higher, according to some of my customers. But I still work on the basis that in medium to long term, this price settles between 450 and 550. This, to me, is the price because we don't have a subsidy any longer in China. When we had a subsidy in China, we were working at 250 to 350. And that represented a 12 to 18% margin for the Chinese mines. With the subsidy gone, they'll have to produce between 450 and 550 in pricing to maintain that same margin. And that brings the biggest distinction of what Almonty is. Almonty was always designed to operate in a low price environment. We never ever worked on the basis that we would need high prices to make fabulous amount of money. We built in all of our fail safes like hard floors. We're the only ones to get it in tungsten and pretty much in critical metals, but but from a customer, we're the only ones that get it. We're the only ones that get tier one project finance lending. We're the only ones that sign NDAs with governments about national security. This is something which makes us unique, but also very viable. And yes, there's been a huge disconnect. The plan was always as Los Santos depleted, Korea would open, and Korea, as we found out, building a democracy is an 8 to 10 year journey, no matter the best laid plans and all that. It's just the reality of building in a democracy. There are only three things that can really stop a mine from opening. One is permits, two is money, and three is the local community. We have all three of those things and have done for a number of years. Without those, we'd still be like many projects, just talking about, maybe one day. So we've been designed for a low price environment. We don't even model internally using the current price because no one would believe the numbers. It'd just be inconceivable. If we can make money out of a 136-year-old mine in Portugal, which has a low grade, comparatively, it's 0.1%. I mean, it's 0.11. Sorry, I'm not going to take it away from the guys. 0.11. And we can make money at that. Forget about the SG&A costs of running the business and, of the company as we build out Korea and the development costs of Korea. Talk mines. Mines themselves. Do they make money? Ours do. They've always made money. And they've been designed for an environment of a much lower price. We're at $800 an MTU now. We planned Sandong for 300. And so at 300, we're at what was it, 30 to 40% net margin income because of the grade. I can't even put 800 into the model because it just doesn't look real. It just looks like I'm essentially making this up. But our guys internally have always worked with like every mining operator. There are good days and there are bad days, and you never plan for the good days. You have to be ready for the bad days. So I don't think pricing will ever return to what we've seen over the last 20 years because it's scarce in China. And they've shut mines, they've cut the subsidies, and they've cut the subsidies not because they don't have any money. This is a rumor that I heard in the EU. Oh, they've got no money. It's not true. They did it for a very pragmatic reason. They understand that to preserve a resource, you must have a free market approach to management of that resource. Because if you have a subsidy, just like, the Soviets and the Venezuelans who pump salt water into their oil wells to sort of jack up, to take advantage of subsidies, and you destroy the resource, China has exactly the same issue. They are not importing vast amounts of whatever they can find, Western concentrate and scrap. They're not seeing higher pricing than we have in the West. They're not paying higher scrap prices than even concentrate because they're just, I don't know, they've got nothing better to do with their time. They have the same scarcity problem that we do. So the key here is three things in tungsten. One, you need longevity. You need to have been around a long time to know how to mine this metal. This metal has the same density as gold, but is brittle as porcelain, making it extremely difficult to process. You need reserves, accessible reserves, not like, oh, I've got this, I can do that. It's just not true. And reserves don't count if you don't have, I don't know, capacity in your tailings, capacity in your waste, permits to do so. You need all of those factors. And most importantly, you need to have credibility because on that basis, you can then attract instruments like tier one project finance lending. You can attract instruments like hard floors, no cap on the upside. You can get support from governments that doesn't involve them owning a piece of you because they won't. I mean, I'm sure they're great people, but not as a shareholder. They will never be aligned with my shareholders. I and my shareholders want value. Governments want material. That's a conflict waiting to happen, and they're the referee. How do you fight with them? But supplying them because you're then helping with US national security or even Korean national security is important. It means that you have a customer that is committed and devoted to you. And the availability of material is more important than anything else. As China is finding out, getting the material is a much bigger driver than the price. And producing this material is not so easy, as many have found out and are finding out. Ladies and gentlemen, we got there. We got to the end. It's going to be now one of those moments where you switch things on like a new car. Do we get a warning light? Are we going to have to take it back for a little bit of a service? But we have permits, money, and community. And now we start the dry commissioning of the grinding circuit. This is what we've all waited for. And the good news is the price isn't going down anytime soon, and the demand isn't dropping off at all. We couldn't basically be opening at a better time. It's like, as I've always said, better to be lucky than smart. Even I'm floored by the piece of good fortune that all of us as shareholders have had. We could not have done this any better timing than we're doing it. And I know the feelings of frustration of let's just see this go because I have millions of dollars. Not, I've heard somebody saying, oh, he doesn't do. I buy my options, I buy my warrants, and I invest money over the last 12, 13 years, actually longer, more than 13 years. I believe in what we do because I've made a great deal of money in this space previously. And that to me was testament to the fact that I cared enough to protect not only my money, but also to keep the value in the business. And if it's taken longer than some people like, what can I do? Not everyone's going to be happy, but I'm happy. And if I'm happy, that means I'm in the money. And if I'm in the money, all of my shareholders are in the money. And that's really the key. As long as you keep seeing my face and my money going into this, you know everything is going as I would like. And nobody wants to make money out of this more than me. To such a point that even my customers feel that I'm a shameless person by always asking them for more. Absolutely. We have something no one else has. We do it very well, and we're going to profit from it because we're going to do a fantastic job that's going to solve many problems that currently exist within our space. It is a scarce metal. We know how to work it, and we've got the biggest and best project. And now on that, I hand it back to my moderator to see how much trouble I'm in.
You're in no trouble, Mr. Black. Questions are more in the regard of, for example, has dismantling operations started in Los Santos already?
No, we won't just. We're going to borrow some of the equipment. So it's winter. Basically, we're going to spend the winter in Montana. Getting our feet under the desk, and I would imagine in sort of March we'll start to borrow some pieces from Los Santos to send it over. Those pieces we wouldn't use in the tailings recovery there in Los Santos anyway, so it's no detriment to the project.
Perfect. Is the nano oxide plant possibly being planned to exceed the 4,000 to 6,000 ton range?
No, it's not. I'm a tungsten miner, and I want to be able to feed it, myself. I don't want to be in the market buying material. I'm not an APT guy or an oxide guy. I am, I want to be vertical.
Perfect. The time is up, Mr. Black.
Sorry.
The time is up. I would like to keep you for hours and hours, but this is it. I thank you once again for your time. 4 years, we follow your journey. We're all in. We're very, very, very happy of the result and being part of your journey for that little part we have. And we wish you the best of luck. Next time we talk, normally,
I'll be swimming in tungsten.
exactly.
Thanks, Julian. Take care.
All right. Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.